scene you just saw is from a horror movie that I think anyone who is into the genre would know. Most of us think the story is made up. But what if I told you that it's not? What if that girl writhing on the floor is real? And her name is Anneliese Michel. Anneliese Michel was born in 1952 in a quiet town in Bavaria, West Germany. She was raised in a devout Catholic family, the kind where church was not a weekend option, but a way of life. As a child, she attended Mass twice a week, prayed diligently, and was praised for being obedient, kind, and humble. But everything changed when Anneliese turned 16. One ordinary day at school, she suddenly collapsed. When she came to, she remembered nothing, but her classmates said she had been walking in a trance, her eyes blank, her body stiff, as if something else was guiding her. Months later, it happened again. This time, her body convulsed violently. She bit her tongue, her limbs twisted uncontrollably. Doctors diagnosed her with temporal lobe epilepsy, a rare condition that can cause hallucinations, memory loss, and in some cases, extreme religious obsession. She began taking medication, but instead of getting better, her condition grew darker. Anneliese said she started seeing terrifying faces, twisted, demonic, staring at her wherever she went, especially when she tried to pray. She heard voices whispering curses, calling her damned, telling her she would burn in hell. "I'm not just sick," she once told her mother. "There's something inside me, something powerful." From a gentle and quiet girl, Anneliese slowly became panicked and uncontrollable. She was terrified of light, couldn't step inside a church, and at times she would scream through the night as if something was torturing her. Her family grew increasingly desperate. Doctors said it was a psychiatric condition. But Anneliese and her mother, they began to believe that what she carried was not a disease, but a demon. Anneliese's condition worsened quickly. Her sleep became fractured. Restless nights filled with muttering, violent shaking, and cries that no one could understand. She claimed the food was cursed. She refused food and drank her own urine. She saw demons under the table, behind mirrors, even in her own reflection. Sometimes she would crawl under furniture and bark like a dog for hours. Other times, she hurled religious symbols off the walls, spitting at them as if they burned her skin. She ripped the clothes from her body, tore at her own hair, bit into walls, furniture, even herself. Her eyes no longer looked frightened. They looked vacant, or worse, aware of something no one else could see. One night, her mother found her curled in a corner, whispering to herself in voices that didn't sound like hers. Names, strange ancient names, over and over. Lucifer, Judas, Cain, Nero. She said they were all inside her, fighting for control. And though the medication continued, it did nothing, because what Anneliese was battling didn't seem like something science could cure anymore. The family didn't know what to believe anymore. Medicine had failed them, and every night, Anneliese seemed to slip further away. So they turned to the only place left, the church. But priest after priest shook their heads. Some were polite, others blunt. "This is a medical problem," they said, "not a matter of demons." Until one man didn't turn them away. His name was Father Ernst Alt. He didn't laugh or asking for proof. He simply listened, quietly, carefully, as Anna described her daughter's screams, her fear of holy images, her voice that sometimes wasn't hers at all. And then, after a long pause, Father Alt looked her in the eyes and said, "I believe she's possessed." It was the first time anyone had said it out loud. From that moment, everything changed. Father Alt wrote a letter to the local bishop. He described the unnatural strength, the knowledge Anneliese couldn't possibly have, her hatred of prayer, her reaction to blessed objects. "She doesn't behave like someone who is ill," he wrote. "She behaves like someone being controlled." Weeks passed. The family waited in silence. Then finally, the answer came. Permission was granted. An exorcism was allowed, but under one strict condition. It had to be kept secret. No press, no neighbors, not even the other parishioners could know. And so, behind closed doors, in a small back room of the Michel family home, the church returned to one of its oldest weapons. Two priests were chosen, Father Ernst Alt and Father Arnold Renz. They arrived as warriors, carrying holy water, crucifixes, and the ancient words of the Rituale Romanum. Candles were lit. The air grew cold. Anneliese was brought into the room. Her body was frail. Her eyes were sunken. But she smiled, a crooked, unnatural grin. And then she laughed. Not a laugh of relief, a laugh that chilled the room. A voice that didn't belong to a 23-year-old girl echoed off the walls. Something had been waiting. The first session lasted nearly 4 hours. Anneliese screamed until her voice broke. Her body twisted on the floor like something was trying to escape her skin. Father Alt held the crucifix high. Father Renz read the prayers in Latin, steady and loud. But whatever was inside her, it didn't fear them. It mocked them. It spoke in different voices, deep, old, male, female, all coming from one mouth. Sometimes it laughed, sometimes it growled, and sometimes it whispered things no one else could know. After the session, Anneliese collapsed. Sweat soaked her hair. Her lips were cracked from biting them. But when her mother tried to help, she pushed her away and hissed like an animal. At night, she barked like a dog and crawled under the table again. By the 5th or 6th exorcism, the house no longer felt like a home. Rooms were cold, even in summer. Lights flickered for no reason, and a strange smell, something rotten, filled the air during every session. It wasn't just Anneliese who was changing, it was the whole house. The possession was no longer something hidden inside her, it was in the walls. But the worst part was that she still had moments of clarity, moments where she cried and begged her mother, "Please, help me. I don't want to be like this." And then, within seconds, the demons would return, and the screams would start all over again. "I want it to end," she told her mother one night, her voice barely a whisper. "But it won't leave. It says I said yes." Anneliese Michel sat beside her daughter, holding her thin, shaking hand, unsure whether she was comforting a child or a soul already halfway gone. By the 40th session, she no longer ate. She couldn't chew, couldn't swallow. Her throat was torn from screaming. Her knees were broken from kneeling. Her weight dropped dangerously low, but she refused to stop the exorcisms. "I must suffer," she said. "I chose this, to save others." No one fully understood what she meant, not even the priests. But the fear in her eyes was real, and the thing inside her was still fighting to stay. The final exorcisms were filled with silence, not because the demons were gone, but because Anneliese no longer had the strength to fight. She lay still, eyes wide open, staring at something no one else could see. Sometimes she whispered names, sometimes she cried without sound, and sometimes she smiled, a tired, broken smile, as if she knew the end was coming. On the 67th session, Father Renz read the final prayers. Father Alt stood at her feet, silent, exhausted. The room was cold. The crucifix shook in his hands. Anneliese opened her eyes one last time and said, "Beg for absolution." Then, she fell still. By July 1st, 1976, Anneliese Michel was gone. She weighed only 66 pounds. Her bones were broken, her face frozen in pain, or peace. No one could tell. The exorcisms had ended, but the questions were only just beginning, and Anneliese Michel was buried beneath the cold Bavarian soil, her body too broken, her story too strange. News of her death spread like fire. A young woman, just 23, dying after 67 exorcisms? People were horrified, angry, confused. Was it religion, neglect, madness? And then came the trial. March 30th, 1978. The courtroom filled with whispers. On one side, Joseph and Anna Michel, her grieving parents. On the other, Fathers Alt and Renz, the two priests who had led the exorcisms. All four were charged with negligent homicide. The prosecution painted a picture of cruelty hidden behind faith. They called doctors who testified that Anneliese had been mentally ill, not possessed, that she needed treatment, not Latin prayers. They showed her weight, 66 pounds, her cause of death, malnutrition and dehydration. Then they played the recordings, voices growling, screaming, laughing through her throat. The defense argued back. This wasn't just illness. This was something else, something darker. Finally, the priests were found guilty, sentenced to 6 months in prison, suspended, and 3 years of probation. The parents were also found guilty, but spared punishment. The judge simply said, "They have suffered enough." Because the truth was terrifying either way. If she had been sick, then a young woman was allowed to die in agony. Everyone called it salvation. But if she had been right, if something truly dark had taken her, then no law in the world could explain what happened in that room. Years passed, but Anneliese Michel was never forgotten. Some said they heard whispers near her headstone, soft voices that vanished in the wind. Others said they saw shadows pass by her old home long after midnight. Buses arrived from far away. People knelt in the grass, left candles, and handwritten notes. They called her a martyr, a saint. Some believed she died not of illness, but as a sacrifice, to save others. The Catholic Church would later admit Anneliese had been mentally ill. They distanced themselves from the case, quietly changing their policies on exorcisms. No longer could one be approved without absolute proof, without strict oversight. They called it reform. And then came the movies, books, documentaries. The Exorcism of Emily Rose, released in 2005, introduced Anneliese's story to the world, twisted, fictionalized, dramatized. But the heart of it was still a war between science and faith. Today, her grave remains a place of silence and prayer. Fresh flowers appear every week. Crosses and rosaries hang from nearby trees. People still whisper her name, some for comfort, some for forgiveness. But the truth behind Anneliese Michel's death? No one can say for sure. All we know is that she never made it out.